Okay, so I'll start broadcasting. We just lost our interpreter. I hope he comes back. Okay. Good evening, everyone, or good morning for those in the West. This is our last part, so welcome everyone, and thank you very much for sharing together this wonderful topic on the Vaisnavi Saints. I will just offer my obeisances and my prayers. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Godadaya Pushpavanto Chitrasando Tamonudo. Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charana Sakho Sukhado Paramanando Sundaro Subalo Priyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. Okay, our interpreter is not back, so we just start without and we see if something starts working. Yeah. Okay. So the last time we have reached the modern Vaishnavi saints, we were going through 3 different prominent. Okay. So looks like he's back. Recording in Spanish. Allow. Who will be the interpreter? Haribol. Usted ya está, ¿no? Le doy como Juan Morales, ¿sí? Le doy a ver.
Acabo de cambiar mi nombre, pero es el mismo cuenta, la misma cuenta.
Bueno, pero ya yo no veo ahora interpretation. Qué raro, quizás porque estoy en el inglés o... manage language. Ahí está. Ok, ya. Ok. Ya, creo que... Update. ¿Está bien? Ok. Y recording in Spanish ya tiene la permisión. Ok, ya está. Gracias. Ok. And we're streaming. So it should be fine. Okay, great. So the last time we were going through the modern Vaishnavi saints, we went through 3 of them, very prominent in the last century. There were 5 together, current or more modern Vaishnavi saints in our Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage. And we will now go through 2 other, which the next one is very interesting. Her name is Shirimati Devi. And it is said about her that it's interesting that in view of the accepted wisdom, women saints in Indian religions are comfortable in their identity in contrast with men, who often, those who particularly worship Radha Krishna, seek some female identification. And in the story of Shirimati Devi, it's just the opposite. The author of this book, O.B.L. Kapoor, he is explaining her legend in connection with Krishnananda Swami. He was a Punjabi disciple of the Nityananda family, descendant of Pran-Gopal Goswami. And so he was initiated, Krishnananda Swami was her guru. And he was initiated in the Gaudiya tradition in lineage of promoters of Manjari mood. But Krishnananda worshipped Krishna in Sakya Rasa. His guru wanted him to take disciples and preach devotion to Krishna. Krishnananda Swami was reluctant because he wished to avoid association of women. So for years, he had kept the vow that he would never look upon the face of a woman. And he continued to keep his vow until he came in contact with an 11-year-old girl named Shirimati Devi. So this is the saint we are going to speak about now. Srimati Devi lived in a village of Nagla Lakshampur, this is within the Braj area. So she widowed at the age of 11, and she devoted herself fully to the worship of her Krishna deity. She herself had a tendency to the friendly mood of devotion, and she had heard of Krishnananda Swami and became attached to the idea of becoming his disciple. So at the insistence of some of her relatives, Krishnananda Swami wrote the Mahamantra on a piece of paper and some instructions how to worship Krishna, and wanted just to give to her. But Srimati Devi still wished to see her guru, and she vowed that until she saw him, she would not go outside in the light of the day. She was rising at 4 in the morning, she was bathing, sitting indoors, chanting the holy names until sunset. And she kept this vow for 3 years, but she was not given still the opportunity to see her guru. So finally, she stopped all food and drink, and she was fasting like this for 9 days. When Krishnananda had a vision in which Balaram himself told him that he could break his vow for her sake. After making this breakthrough and receiving personal contact with her guru, Shirimati Devi quickly attained perfection in the friendly mood. She began to dress like a boy, and her behavior, her language, etc., took on the characteristics of a coward boyfriend of Krishna, and people even began to call her Bhaya. This means brother in Hindi. She became progressively absorbed in a total consciousness of Krishna's presence. But her health was very poor, so she did not live much longer after this. And one day, when her guru came to visit her, he took her head in his lap and she said, Bhaya, let's go. Look, Balaram and Krishna are calling their friends to come. So Krishnananda Swami replied, overcome with emotion, go ahead, Bhaya, I'll be right along. So having received this permission from her guru, she entered the eternal world of Braj. It's very interesting that we have a woman saint in the Sakya Rasa dressing as a man and having the instruction of Balaram directly to her guru to break his vow for her sake and give her darshan. And the next, the last of this series of 5 saints is, her name is Girija Devi. She was a wife of a rich landowner in Jamira in Bihar. She was habituated to a life of great luxury. She started to lose interest in family life, however, when her oldest son died at the age of 18. Shortly thereafter, her second son also died. In her grief, she became indifferent to food and drink. Her husband asked his family guru for advice, and he began to read Bhagavata Purana to her to calm her down. As a result of these readings, she began to develop interest in devotion to Krishna and a desire to move to Braj. And despite the family tradition that women could not go away from husbands, her husband actually gave her permission to go. And in Vrindavan, Girija Devi, she rented a room in Radharaman building. There is a Radharaman Ghera. And she quickly began to experience visions of the deity Radharaman. Radharani would appear to her to complain about imperfections in the service that would have been impossible for an outsider to know about. And on one occasion, Radharaman spoke to her by possessing one of the temple priests and speaking through him. Girija Devi also smoked tobacco from a hookah, and she maintained other habits from her days in Bihar. And as a result of that, she was not always looked upon with faith, but eventually such inexplicable events caused the Sevaites of Radharaman to revere her. So there was one Nilamani Goswami, her landlord. He once decided to take her out from the room. He wanted to rent the house at a higher rent. And on that very day, he made the decision, but before carrying out his plan, returning to his home, he could not open the locked door, neither him nor his companions. And although he had the key, and another neighbor, a woman devotee, suggested to him that he had perhaps offended Girija Devi, and that if she gives permission, he would be able to open the door. Nilamani went to her, asked her to open the door, and she was extremely astonished that she was able to unlock the door, and it opened, and they attributed this mysterious event to the arrangements of Radharaman himself. After the death of her husband, Girija Devi spent her last days in Jamira, and she was maintaining her practices and running the family estate. A part of this information, I have found there's a disciple of Prabhupada. I know him for many years, who was the first Western devotee who went to Srila Sridhar Maharaj and took shelter in 1981. And he used to live for some time in Bulgaria, and this is how I know him. And because he lived many years in the month of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he also wrote a very profound article on one of the disciples of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So that's the most current saint I could find. Probably there are more from today, etc. But this one is really very special and very interesting because actually Srila Sridhar Maharaj himself, it is said that he wrote earlier a letter saying that his will is that she becomes a successor after he leaves of his mission. But later on, she was quite sick and she couldn't make any services. But it's very interesting that he wrote even a poem of her glorification, and she's also having a very famous poem on one of his Vyasa pujas. So I found this information from a very old website, and this disciple of Prabhupada, he passed away a few years ago. He was preaching mainly in Singapore, and I knew about this interview, so I'm happy that I found it. So it's actually a short biography written by him, and then on her centennial anniversary, he could interview her with Bodhan Maharaj, disciple of Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, and so thanks to this, we can now read about her. So I will also share with you this information. Her name is Srimati Devi, and she turned 100 years on 12th of January 1998. So this is for this special celebration that this article was written about her. So I will just share with you as well. Stalwart Vaishnavas are rarely to be seen and met, according to Srila Bhakti Ballabhtirtha Goswami Maharaj. Yet, stalwart Vaishnavas never seem to falter. They just persevere no matter what kind of hardships they have to endure. Some 50 plus years ago, Srimati Krishnamai Devi, recently widowed, decided to devote the remainder of her life to Guru and Krishna. She surrendered at the lotus feet of that great Vaishnava preacher, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. She was 40 years old when she widowed, and she joined the ashram, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. His wonderful darshans took the form of a morning full of expectations of the unexpected, the mysterious, minute by minute, expanding revelations pouring from his lotus lips that could melt the heart of any surrendered soul, and equally would baffle those who were not prepared to surrender to the Supreme Magician, Sri Krishna Chandra. She served in the math as a cook for 30 plus years before she was incapacitated by arthritis. At that time, in the early 70s, also another young lady had joined the math and taken shelter at the lotus feet of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave her the name Janavi Devi and engaged her as the personal servant of Krishnamai Devi. And she continued to serve her many years. And so Srila Sridhar Maharaj had an extraordinary trust in Krishnamai Devi. When she was asked why she moved into the mat, she gave a very simple answer that she simply liked it. But because she was so dedicated and she had such a service orientation that she had practically much deeper commitment. She impressed Srila Sridhar Maharaj so much that when he was going on preaching tours, he was leaving the mat. He would leave her as mat in charge until his return. He had a lot of faith in her capacity to stick to the Siddhanta. And in his earlier will, he named her as a successor several times before she became physically incapacitated. And she herself was a preacher of uncommon attributes. It can be attested by her poetic composition. It's called Auspicious Birth of Guru Maharaj. It was printed in English also in Sri Vyasa Pujamritam. It was on the 101st appearance day celebration of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And this part of this poem, which she wrote, is inscribed in Bengali in marble stone on the south wall of Srila Guru Maharaj's Samadhi Mandir, of Srila Sridhar Maharaj Samadhi Mandir. And it was included in many Bengali publications during the time of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. According to high Vaishnavas, this poem is written in an erudite fashion of old Bengali language, using classical style. So in this way, we can really appreciate her uncommon humility, because she had this extraordinary capacity and very, very high tolerance. And she was considered by many devotees at that time as a Shuddha Bhakta. So in her childhood, she was first born in on a most auspicious day, Krishna Punya Abhishek Purnima. And she was educated in Calcutta. She was having exceptional intellect from very early age. At only 11, she obtained excellence in many subjects. And she was given gold medals and honors from some famous judge, Ashutosh Mukhopadhyay. And when she became 40, she was fortunate to meet her spiritual master, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami, who is the 7th sannyasi of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. She received both Harinam and mantra initiations simultaneously from him, and dedicated her life to the service of Sri Guru and Gauranga. She narrates that when she joined the mat, she was requested to perform services for her Gurudev. The temple at that time had been recently established in Navadvip Dham, in Koladvipa, where Jagai and Madai had their famous pastimes with Lord Nityananda. Srila Sridhar Maharaj had made arrangements with some Jaipur Murtiwala, this is the makers of deities, to prepare Shri Shri Radha Krishna deities for the newly constructed temple. When the deities were completed, the name of the very famous Shri Shri Gandharvika Govinda Sundar, they were brought from Jaipur by Krishnamati Devi and a promising young sannyasi, Govinda Maharaj. You know, he was later successor of Sridhar Maharaj. And when the deities arrived, Krishnamati Devi felt very blessed because she was somehow instrumental to escort them to the Holy Dham and her Guru Maharaj's temple. So she thought that the service was done, and she witnessed very inspiring happening. Srila Sridhar Maharaj and his godbrother, Srila Bhaktivedanta Madhava Maharaj, they began to install the deities. And the two godbrothers performed roaring kirtan of immense proportion, which culminated in both of them dancing wildly and loudly chanting for the pleasure of their lordships. Krishnamati Devi was astounded, and she witnessed this very ecstatic event, and her heart became filled with the mercy of their lordships. She actually envisioned at that instance that Sri Sri Gauranitai were in fact dancing before Sri Sri Gandharvika Govinda Sundar. After witnessing this otherworldly event, she told that her commitment to the service of the Supreme Lord deepened through Sri Guru and his grace. So Krishnamati Devi's literary praises were also reciprocated by her Gurudev. He wrote original Sanskrit and Bengali shlokas in praise of her devotional qualities. And at that time, nobody suspected that one of the cooks in the temple was a recipient of so much mercy from Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So here the author is praying that she will forgive him if he was like negligent to her or not treating her with enough respect, that she was such an elevated soul. Many times he says when devotees are very tolerant and very humble, they just accept any type of behavior from anyone. But she was actually 100% surrendered to the wishes of her Guru Maharaj. And the desire of Sridhar Maharaj was to preach and serve the wishes of his Gurudev, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It is also said that Krishnamai Devi, she was one of the main contributors to the building of Chaitanya Saraswat Math. And after living there for 50 years in this temple, and after the passing away of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, she announced that she could no longer stay in the mat. And she was leaving because she was at the age of 96. And she had to move, to go into her more deep bhajan, because she was handicapped and she was completely helpless physically. Here there is a very short passage from Sri Sridhar Maharaj, where he gave a lecture called Unconditional Service, which is a very special, we know that he's having extremely high discourses, but some of them even higher at moments. I would just shortly read just a few sentences because it's a very special one. He's saying the following: we may chant the name, hear the kirtan, but the very life will be present only as much as our activity is on the order descending from the plane above, as much as that order is earnestly being carried out by us. In that way, we may be taken above. We may be promoted to the higher layer by preparing ourselves only to carry out that order from above without question. If we are certain that the order is coming from the higher layer, we should surrender without question. By living at the disposal of the higher, we learn selfless service of the higher, which is not of any mundane source. This is our necessity: Vaishnava Seva, Guru Seva. By Guru Bhakti alone, in one stroke, all desirable pursuits will be accomplished. There are so many symptoms by which to recognize the genuine Guru. By obeying the directions of the higher, we can make progress towards the higher. We may hope to be selected by the higher and be taken up to that layer if we are considered sufficiently qualified. This attitude will be the main tenor of our lives if we want to go to the high superconscious regions. In the Vedanta Sutra, it is mentioned that the process to reach that region is by revealed truth and not by reason. If we apply reason, we shall be nowhere. Among expert arguers, there may be always one more expert, and on, no end. Thus, reason and argument is inconclusive. Intellectualism has no standing here, because superconsciousness is beyond our jurisdiction. It cannot be an object of our intellect. By serving, honoring, self-giving and never otherwise can we invite that higher guest. It's not possible to capture and engage him by intrigue and conspiracy. Such an attempt will betray Satan in another color. Deep self-surrender will take us into connection with the higher noble substance, and it must be cultivated by any and all means. That's the end of the quote. So Krishnamai Devi, she came out from the mat of her Guru Maharaj after he left the planet. She continued to search for Sri Krishna, and she was not content to be just comfortable, materially well off. And after that, she was served by several famous Vaishnavas, Gaur Krishna Prabhu, the same Janavi Devi from the very beginning, and also Bhishma, the sister of Srila Prabhupada. She was also taking care of her. In the place where she lived after, it's also in Srinavat Vidham, in the mat of Badrinarayan Prabhu. In that auspicious holy place, was celebrated her centennial birthday, and many very famous Vaishnavas of that time, also disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, came to honor her. And we can see how Vaishnavas really elevated one. That's just another level of mutual respect and worship, and it's very pleasing to listen about it. And here the author describes that those who attended the celebration were Nananda Das Babaji Maharaj. He was a very famous disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He passed away in 2003. I personally could meet him only one time in 2001, and he's extraordinary Vaishnava. Then Bhakti Vaibhav Sagar Maharaj, who is disciple of Bhakti Vilas Tirtha Maharaj, was also attending this celebration. Buddhan Maharaj, disciple of Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj as well. So at that time also, the brother of Shiva Sridhar Maharaj, his name is Amar Babu, he sent one of his sons, Nanda Kumar, to attend the ceremonies, and many other number of prominent lady devotees. Shirimati Devi, who was serving Krishnamai so many years. And at that time, there was another Anuradha Devi, who was very famous. So the author here says that he asked her many times to give an interview, but she always rejected. And at that time, she was also never returning Dandavat pranams offered to her from brahmacharis. And because some misinterpreted this as she was having some seniority complex, but on the contrary, she herself felt unworthy to receive dandavats from an ascetic because she was a woman. But they anyway continued to offer her dandavats because they concluded that Krishnamai Devi was far beyond bodily distinctions. And with the help of Buddhan Maharaj, she could give an interview which is a short one. I will just read you the questions and answers between the two. Here, Buddhan Maharaj is asking, can you tell us about your first meeting with Srila Sridhar Maharaj? She's replying, I cannot remember dates and times. I do remember receiving his genuine love and blessings. I formerly came to the mat without telling my family members because there would have been an objection. They would have prevented me from coming. What were the circumstances surrounding the acquisition of the land for Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Math? And the answer here, it was during the time of the monsoons. We found that a huge snake was on the rooftop. We were all concerned and trying to devise a way to rid the place of the serpent. But Srila Guru Maharaj said we should let that snake be, because he had no place else to go because the water was too high. He remained there without incident. After some time, Srila Guru Maharaj brought Srila Govardhan Shila from Vrindavan, and he composed one stotra. After that, he constructed the mat with donations from the devotees. Gopal Mishra used to work there, and also Bhutnath, Dharmadashini, and Dulal Malik, and Nityananda Prabhu. The Ugra Kshatriya caste contributed a lot of the funds, and I also gave some money towards the construction of the third floor. I sold my land of about 3 bigas of Shimjuli for rupees 10,000 and donated the lot. Altogether, I gave around 40,000 rupees, and my daughter also contributed. Question, why did you decide to move into the mat? I came to live to the mat because I liked it. I asked my uncle for permission, and he said, yes, there is a genuine holy man there. My father did not approve of it, so I had to come without his knowledge. What was your service when you joined the mat? I prepared foodstuffs in the kitchen of the mat and also offered puja. When I first came here, only the ground floor had been constructed. On one of my earlier visits, I had a quarter of a rupee with me, which I donated and commented to Srila Guru Maharaj, I would like to have given more. And Goswami Maharaj, Keshav Maharaj, Madhusudan Maharaj, and Paramahamsa Maharaj, and Yajavar Maharaj, all of them used to come and stay here. They all had so much affection for me. I later went to Vrindavan with Yajavar Maharaj. When Srila Guru Maharaj went to Badarik Ashram, did you accompany the party? That's the last question. I did go with Guru Maharaj, I remember, but I don't remember the year or the places we traveled through. I also remember going to Rameshwar with him one year. I was advised not to go because my son-in-law was very ill. They feared he might leave his body. Still, it was my heartfelt desire to go on pilgrimage with Guru Maharaj, so I did that. When I returned, amazingly, my son-in-law was still alive. And here the summing up of Buddhan Maharaj is that whatever is performed for Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga is certainly not in vain, it would seem. We should try to glorify the holy Vaishnavas, as is our capacity and qualification, but it seems that we are always and forever short of the mark. Please accept my humble obeisances and best wishes for a glorious centennial celebration. So that's the end of the interview and the biography on Krishna Mai, Devi Dasi. So it was said now that several times Srila Sridhar Maharaj was pointing her as a successor, which would be quite even imagine at that time. Like Srila Sridhar Maharaj, of course, is super famous for being essence seeker and form breaker. That would be really one of his amazing performances if he would just put a successor woman at that time after him, but she was incapacitated and sick of arthritis, and she needed like special care and everything. So he would point, as we know, Govinda Maharaj was his successor. And just as a very last of like a summing up the whole discourse, I would like, excuse me for a moment. Sorry, my sound a little bit here is disturbing. So what I wanted to share, like reading the wonderful biographies of all these Vaisnavi saints and speaking about the topic going beyond how to say, designations of bodily concepts and even higher to this most highest ideal we follow. I would say that we are very lucky to have this view. Oh, somebody has signed me out from the, yeah, I hope it will continue streaming, but yeah, just to sum up, because before it cuts off. So I wanted to share that I'm very grateful to Guru Maharaj about this open-mindedness and taking into consideration Kalapatra Desha, because it is very important to be able to look for to follow our spiritual path in a way that we look for the essence and not just for the some external designations. We have so much to say. We have heard and we have seen so many different approaches in the West, and but somehow we have to come to this ideal which Mahaprabhu have given, that I'm not a brahmachari, I'm not a brahmana, etc., etc. And so considering man, woman, Russian, American, etc., we have to really go beyond this limitation. And also Padmanabh Maharaj was speaking recently about one of the things, one of the niyama agrahas is when you follow certain things without knowing why. Just you take out of the context of what Bhagavatam says, for example, about women or grihastas or whatever family man. And when this is like copy-paste of what we try to follow as a spiritual path, there is like this external material designation which appears, and from there, like absolutizing one extreme or another generally is always giving create some artificial atmosphere. We have seen how, for example, there is a special glorification of one to be a man or a sannyasi or a brahmachari or anything. And when such type of differences are brought, instead of following the purity and devotion and dedication, etc., then very easily we can just create some hierarchy and some finally material society, because when we glorify external things, people become attracted to to show these externalities, like to become artificially sannyasis or to glorify that they are men or women or whatever. And finally, they take positions in society where they can just use this society, and everything becomes quite cynical. So that's why we have now the chance in the West, being one of the first generations, like third or something, where we can actually follow our ideals in this way, as the saints are showing, as our gurus are showing, and to follow in their footsteps and not, so to say, betray the ideal and the path and example they give to us. So I would say that we should be very lucky and feel very blessed to be able to follow in this way. This is what I wanted to share. If there are any questions and discussion, or anyone would like to add something. I think we are not broadcasting anymore, or at least somebody has stolen just the account. I'm not the host anymore, but yeah, we'll see how it will work.
Good morning, Sadhvi. It's Kanaram here.
Good morning. Hare Krishna, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I missed the first part of your class. I just have a really basic question. Like, so this person that you're talking about, is her name Krishna Mai? Is that right? And
yes.
Okay. And she's one of the god sisters of Srila Prabhupada and like Srila Sridhar Maharaj, or she's the disciple of Srila Sridhar Maharaj?
She's a disciple of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. It's explained she joined when she was 40. And the article I was reading about it was from 1998, when she was turning 100 years. And
okay.
I don't know if anyone else has written about her, but I found this article and it was quite interesting. And it was written by a Prabhupada disciple who left this world a few years ago, and he was the first Westerner going to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, taking shelter of him in 1981. So yeah, and he took sannyas from him. His name is Hrishikesh Maharaj. So I found from him this article because he lived in Bulgaria for some years. I knew him, I mean, before, and he wrote this article because he was witness to all that.
Thank you very much for sharing about such a nice saintly personality.
Thank you. This is what I could find, gathered, whatever, like from different, because from before we had some publication about Vaishnava women saints from modern time and from time of Mahaprabhu. So there is not so much information, but this is, I could gather a bit. So probably in the future, people will start to write more about it, because somehow in the, it's a bit conservative in India, was until now. So it was not so much written about women saints as general. Any other question or comment? Okay, thank you so much, and for giving me the opportunity and listening to those biographies and also being in your company. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Have a very wonderful day. Hari Hari Bol.